welcome to Global Connections. I'm Patrick Bratton, your host today, and we're going to be talking about sustainable development, a lot of the different issues around this very complicated and vital topic to both us here in Hawaii and then also in the world. Before we get started with my guests, I just wanted to make an announcement that speaking along the themes of sustainable development at HPU, we're going to be hosting a presidential lecture series on sustainable development with a couple of topics that are quite interesting coming up. And I think we have a visual for you for that. So on February 9th, we have Investing in Nature for Resilient Societies and a Sustainable Future, which is with Inger Anderson, who is the Director General of the International Union for Conservation of Nature, who is here, very important leader about important issues as well. And then later on February 18th, we will have Can Science Save Us? Advice for the Next President of the United States by Dr. Neil Lane, Senior Fellow for Science and Technology at Rice's University's James Baker Institute for Public Policy. The presidential lecture series on global leadership and sustainable development brings to HPU national and internationally recognized speakers to stimulate conversation and promote leadership on critical topics related to environmental sustainability. So please, if you're interested, please pop by some interesting speakers as well. And speaking of interesting speakers, it's my pleasure to be joined today by Nathan Albritton. Albritton. That's correct. Good. Who is an alumnus of our Global Leadership and Sustainable Development program that we have at HPU, and also is sort of a Renaissance man, very many different interests, many hats that he wears, both in his past and in his present. So I'd like to talk with him and have you guys learn about some of the things that he's been doing with the Sustainable Leader and other projects. So congratulations. Thank you for being here with us on ThinkTech.
Thank you very much for having me.
This is your first time on ThinkTech?
On ThinkTech, yes it is.
Okay, excellent.
Very excited about it.
Good, we'll have to have you be here more often. So tell me a little bit about your background. I always like to start off with where people are from and how they got to Hawaii, because everybody's got a story, even if you're from here. So.
Okay, I'm originally from the state of Georgia, from the southeast. I do not have an accent.
Okay.
I joined the Air Force when I was, in 2001, just following 9/11, to give back to my country. So I spent 4 years in the United States Air Force as a Korean linguist.
Oh.
They sent me off to the Defense Language Institute in Monterey, California, taught me Korean, and then sent me off to Asia, and I loved it. I actually left the military after a few years, worked within the Defense Department for years, working on various crises throughout the world, both in Europe, Africa, Asia, and throughout. Over the course of time, I started, after so many crises and so many issues, I started to get a little bit disheartened. Why were these things occurring? What were the best ways to deal with them? And that actually brought me to sustainable development as a way of addressing those problems before they actually become problems. And so that's been kind of my story, if you will, to get to this point where I am now. So as my primary thing I focus on now is the Sustainable Leader, which is a citizen journalism news media website, which is meant to encourage people at all levels to address the many issues around our world in their hometowns or even further abroad. So that's my approach to giving back to the world to help make it a better place.
So it's a web journal that you've helped found, and you get people who volunteer to write content, or how does it work?
That is correct. So I'm an alumnus of the Hawaii Pacific University's Global Leadership and Sustainable Development program, and I realized there were a lot of amazing thoughts happening inside of those classrooms. I was like, we need to get this stuff out. It's not just somebody, some bigwig who comes up with these ideas. There's people in this classroom who have ideas. So I was trying to get those individuals to share their ideas and start to implement them. And a lot of those folks did. So we have a number of current students as well as graduate students from the program who have contributed to the website. We also have people from all around the world who've contributed. We have viewers from as far as China and India to Europe, et cetera. So we have a fairly widespread. We do tend to be more Hawaii-centric, or at least in the beginning, but we've broadened our focus to be a little more global over the years. So, but we're still a very young organization, and we're looking for more writers, contributors, and editors.
Okay, interesting. I mean, what would be, and since you've founded, what have been some of the more interesting topics that have gotten a lot of attention that you've covered?
Well, of course, some of the main intentions for sustainable development or that community are things like climate change. GMOs always causes a little bit of a stir. Anything to do with Monsanto is very well read. Definitely some of our most well-read articles are about Monsanto, which is very interesting. We have a lot of food-related topics. Here in Hawaii, some fishing topics do pop up on time here and there. But I would say probably climate change, energy issues. We have a very big community following energy issues on the island because of our smart grid, moving towards smart grid with lots of the solar access. So I would say energy is also probably one of our biggest topics.
Well, one of the things I want to pick up that you said is I think a thing that one of the many unique things about Hawaii is that, at least from the outsider's perspective, for sustainability, it seems to be an issue that's kind of almost sort of in your face in Hawaii. We're not a lot of space in Hawaii. There's a lot of critical issues between, endemic species or the energy issues. I mean, would you say that's fair, that maybe Hawaii, we tend to have these issues are a bit more in the forefront or maybe more visible than they would be in other places, or?
Very much so. I think the issues of sustainable development are found all over the world. But when you're on a continent, you tend to, the time to realize that is a lot slower because you have a lot more resources, a lot more, like on the mainland, we have so much just open land. Here in Hawaii, we don't have that luxury. We have 1 million people, roughly 1 million people on Oahu alone. So that in itself is, from a social perspective, just a lot of people, some people think overpopulation, land issues, marine resource issues such as fishing and things like all these big topics you see on the news here in Hawaii, people talk about. It's very much in your face. I would say Hawaii is really a microcosm. That's the word most people use, a microcosm for the issues that the world faces as a whole. For instance, social tensions on the island. To be frankly honest, we do have them and we're working through them, but the whole world has social tensions, but it's just not so much in their face. If you're in Minnesota, you don't really think about racism or trying to cross over between different borders of groups of people. And so here in Hawaii, you see that on a daily basis, just by going from one town to the next. So I would say, yeah, it's very much in our face, and I think that because it's a small island, or islands, every island has a unique set. It actually is a very, I don't want to say experiment, but I would say it's a great case study or great test bed for a lot of the issues to dealing with sustainable development.
Okay. To take not to put you on the spot, but to take your test bed analogy, I mean, where's maybe an issue where the test bed has been successful in Hawaii, and then maybe an issue where the test bed is perhaps but not so successful in terms of a way forward with a particular issue?
Well, there's a number of wonderful issues happening, or wonderful initiatives, such as the community-based fisheries here on the island. So subsistence fisheries, groups of people getting together to protect their natural resources within their local towns, which has been amazing. Molokai has had one for up on in Molokai, just amazing people working together to protect those areas. So I would say fishing, anything to do with the marine life. As a dive instructor as well, I love being in the water, and I meet so many amazing people, whether they're fishers or they're divers or they're spearfishers. People are very engaged with the oceans here. So that's I'm very proud of Hawaii for working with each other. There's a lot of room to move, a lot of room to grow in that, but I think there's a lot of people working together. Pupukea, for instance, up on the North Shore, Sharks Cove area. There are so many people in that community working to make sure that is a healthy, productive place for our marine life, and it shows. So I think that's a very good case study. Some other issues that I think we are still working out, such as the Mauna Kea issue, I think that's an issue that I think definitely needs to be spoken about, discussed with. I personally take the route where I believe people should have conversation. You may not agree with the person across from the table, but actually to have that conversation is really important. In fact, sustainable development, there's a good analogy for it, really. It's very similar to, it's like a triangle, if you will, a slice of pizza, where each point of the piece of pizza is one side. So one arm of sustainable development is the business side of sustainable development. Another side is the environmental side. And the third side would be the social or the community aspect. And so the idea of sustainable development is to get all three of those different groups of people together to discuss the issues and work things out. Because if any one of them wins, if any one of them is pushed above, the whole thing falls. For instance, if you focus on business, well, business, profit, 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 as we've seen with capitalism has worked over the last 20, 30 years or longer. It tends to exploit the natural resources, exploit the society and the community at their expense. And so, eventually that will fall, and the people will not have any money to buy the goods from the business. There will be no resources left to actually create the products the businesses make. And so everybody loses. The business will eventually crash. Whereas if you have an environmentalist group, for instance, who wants to save the turtles or save the whales or whatever, and they block it off where humans cannot use that space, whether it's for recreation or whether it's for a business purpose, well then the actual environment loses out on a very potentially positive species. Humans can be very positive. I know that's not commonly heard, but we're not particularly a cancer. We might be acting that way now, but we don't have to be. And on the third side, if you are constantly focused on the society, such as we found in communism in China, well, you have you're not taking care of the environment. You're taking care of just the community. You're not taking care of the businesses because the businesses are considered evil, and so again, everybody loses. So the idea is to have all those pieces together, all the different people in the same room talking about the issues, to work together to move the situation forward.
So sort of a sustainable development should find its sort of own sort of Aristotelian golden mean then between these three sort of factions, if you will.
Yes. Like I said, the piece of pizza, if you put a marble on top of that pizza, that's how I like to visualize it. If any of those things tilt, that marble falls and we all lose. So that's probably the best way I like to see it. I'm also a mediator as well here at the Mediation Center of the Pacific, and I find the lessons I've learned with working with those folks to be fantastic, because what they do is they get people together in a room. The people bring themselves, they want to be there, to discuss ways we can move forward in the situations they have, whether it's a parking spot or a tree they're fighting over or whatever the issue is. And of course, Mauna Kea, those kinds of mediated, how can we move forward with this? We're on the same island, or on the Big Island. We need to deal with this. We can't just yell at each other. You can't kick them off the island. You have to figure it out. Okay. So,
well, we'll have to take a short break, and then we'll come back, and I want to talk more about the mediation and how this links up with the sustainable development.
Wonderful.
All right. Well, we're here at Global Connections. We'll be right back.
Aloha, namaskar, and hello. My name is Anu Hittel, and I host the show called Climate Change Beyond Outrage. We go beyond outrage to find solutions to climate problems facing people, nations, and the world. I hope you will join me here every Tuesday at 1 o'clock. We broadcast live from thinktechhawaii.com. Aloha and bye-bye.
Hi, I'm Ethan Allen, host of Likeable Science on Think Tech Hawaii. Come join us every Friday at 2 p.m. when I interview interesting scientists about what they do, why they do it, and why we should all care about it. It's a lot of fun to see. And you can learn interesting stuff. You'll hear all kinds of fascinating science, and we know you'll have a great time. Hope to see you then. Bye-bye.
Aloha, my name is Kirsten Baumgart-Turner, and I'm the host of Sustainable Hawaii at thinktechhawaii.com. We air live on the internet and also on Oceanic Channel 16. I'd invite you to come for a fresh new show every Tuesday from 12 to 1 o'clock. I try to bring on guests that give us a different viewpoint on aspects of sustainability in Hawaii, as well as trying to unpack some of the difficult concepts of measuring and achieving sustainability, particularly with regard to sustainable economic growth and prosperity in Hawaii. Please join us every Tuesday from 12 to 1 p.m. Mahalo, aloha.
Hello and welcome back to Global Connections. I'm Patrick Bratton. I'm joined today by my guest Nathan Albritton, who's talking about sustainable development and many other things that he's been doing in his interesting life. So right before the break, we were talking about some of your experiences with the Mediation Center at the Pacific. You've just started becoming a volunteer for them, right?
Correct, yes.
So you probably get this question a lot. what does a mediator do, and what does the Mediation Center of the Pacific do?
Okay, again, I'm very new as a mediator, so I'm still learning the full ropes. But a mediator is basically someone who controls a process. They act as a communications individual. They try to get information to flow between people who don't necessarily want to talk to each other or don't know how to talk to each other. And so, for instance, you would have, say, two parties in a mediation. They both want to be there. That's the first step. Do you want to be there? Unless it's court ordered, then you have to be there, which I work with too sometimes. But if you are there to figure out the issue, we know that you want to work together. So now we ask the first party, hey, what do you want to get out of this? We ask their position. What do you want? Okay, and then we ask, we also ask the other question, which is, what do you need? What do you need to make this a good conversation for you? And we ask the other party the same thing. And then we act as almost like a shuttle diplomacy type of way, where we go from one person to the next, and we try to share information with them with the people's consent. Do you mind if I share this information with the next party? And if they say yes, then we help them speak with each other. And then what we find is that over the course of a few back and forth shuttle diplomacy trips, we find that they see the other person's perspective a little bit better, and they're willing to talk. And so they move them past the pain and hurt of the topic or the conflict towards the present, and also what can we do in the future to fix this. It works very well on an island, I think, because honestly, if you've been on the island for a while, I've been here for just a little bit, but you run across the same people very often. And so whether it's a landlord you've worked with before, or you've had a problem with that, or whether it's maybe a neighbor, something like that, you may not be neighbors with them forever, but you'll see them again. Yeah. But if you are neighbors, a lot of times you are going to be there for 30, 40 years. And so you need to get to know those people and get to work through your problems. And I think the island has a lot of big issues like that, where, again, we're not kicking people off the island. It's not going to happen. So we have to find a way to live with each other. So, where
do you see the link between mediation and sustainable development?
As I was mentioning earlier, I think that sustainable development, we all are on this planet together. We're all trying to figure out how to make this world better for ourselves and for our children. I don't know anybody in the world who doesn't want to make the world better. People don't wake up in the morning and say, God, I want to be evil this morning. I just got to do something bad. They come in with good intentions. They want to make the world better. Whether it's the U.S. government or the U.S. military wanting to spread democracy around the world, or whether it's Monsanto trying to grow a bunch of food for people. Now, I know people would disagree with that. There's different sides of that, but those people honestly believe that. I'm growing more food for the world. But from a different perspective, hey, you might be doing that wrong. So if you come to the person, the other side, and you recognize that they're trying to do something positive, but they may not be doing it the right way, working together and treating them as individuals and as people, and working with them, you build up a relationship, and you can start talking about those differences. And so by talking about it, you can actually find a way to work together to a common goal. And that's kind of the goal of mediation, is to get people to work together. And so with sustainable development, again, being all three arms, the community side, the environmental side, and the business side, getting all three parties in the same room is very important. And that was the original creation of sustainable development. Sustainable development was made by, the concept was made by the UN, the UN Brundtland Commission, to get those people around the same table. And,
Okay. Kind of to maybe make a segue, you mentioned the UN. Both, I would imagine with your web journal with the Sustainable Leader, there's an interesting conference that's coming up soon that a lot of people aren't aware of, right? Would you like to mention that?
I would be happy to. Yes, there's a conference called the International Union for the Conservation of Nature, Iucn. They are putting on the World Conservation Congress. The Iucn is the oldest environmental organization on the planet, and also the biggest. If it gives you an idea of the size or the breadth of this organization, World Wildlife Fund is one of their members.
Oh, okay.
One of their members underneath their umbrella. And so they're, I wouldn't say a small member, but they're just one of many. And so this is a really big deal. People calling it the Olympics of conservation. It's a huge event that's going to happen. And they're going to be coming here for their World Conservation Congress at the beginning of September this year. It happens every 4 years somewhere around the world. and countries lobby for it. I mean, it's like APEC, when APEC came here. You have to really want it, and the US government actually had to lobby for it. The State Department was actually on the ball trying to get it to happen here in Hawaii. So it's a really big deal. The last time it happened in Korea. Next time they're potentially thinking it might be China. That's still up for decision, but the fact that Hawaii was chosen for it, the first time that the United States has actually been chosen for this conference.
Oh, really?
Fantastic. I mean, it really is a really important event that's going to happen here in Hawaii. So, and they don't just focus on the conservation of nature. Despite their name, they're actually very focused on the Millennium Development Goals. The Sustainable Development Goals. So sustainable development is everything for them. It's the nature is a big piece of it, but also, what about society? What about business? How do we get all those people together? So really, Hawaii is becoming very quickly this year the focus point for sustainable development around the world, which I find fascinating. So.
One of the things is, is there going to be, one criticism, like a lot of the, some people make, is that we'll host these conferences in Hawaii, and people come all over from the United States or all over from the rest of the world, and they talk about big issues, and they go away, and it doesn't really seem to change anything about Hawaii other than interrupting traffic for a couple of days, so when APEC was here. Will there be, sort of Hawaii issues that will be discussed, and will this have a direct effect on Hawaii, or is Hawaii just hosting this?
So, well, to show you the size of it, it's going to be, they're expecting around 8,000 delegates from around the world. That's bigger than APEC. So you're going to see more of an impact here on the island. I think, I haven't fully seen their full program yet, but there's a call for papers, months ago, and a lot of folks from Hawaii did put in their papers. We'll be giving, discussions from the community. The community is invited for a 3 or 4 day forum before the World Conservation Congress kicks off. So it'll be anybody from the community who wants to come join to be a part of that. It's not just world focused. There are a lot of pieces, I believe, that are Hawaii centric.
Okay.
One of the things, so one of my hats, I'm not just a mediator, I'm also the editor-in-chief of the Sustainable Leader, which is again, a citizen journalism website. It's basically a news website for people who want to change the world. If you have, whether you're an expert in something, whether it's climate change, or you're really focused on energy or conservation, or if you're just somebody who's really interested in making your community better. So you could be a soccer mom, and you really don't want your kids to have poor quality food at school. To contribute a piece of an article or a video or discussion about that. And so that's to tap into our local community here. What we'd like to do with the Sustainable Leader, with the World Conservation Congress being here, is to utilize that platform to encourage people to talk about our issues here on the island, and also share them with the world, because people are looking to Hawaii this year to be the leader, or at least the host/leader of this push for the Sustainable Development Goals, which the UN recently reapproved. So we have a lot of opportunity now to really work on the issues that we have. We have the impetus to make that happen. And so I think the Sustainable Leader and Think Tech Hawaii, I think, would be very good vehicles to help push that change forward. Get people talking about these issues. And not just people that you normally listen to, your silo of information, your few family and friends, but get somebody you just don't understand, you don't agree with, and try to figure out where they're coming from and finding a way to work with them. So that's my goal for this year.
Okay. Is there one or two issues you yourself either follow or you find very important that you're looking forward to being discussed at this forum, or?
My history has been, I've also worked as a Socio-Cultural Analyst as a consultant to the US government, and so my focus has has largely been on the social side of things. Again, how do you get people to work together? So I would just love to see that conversation happen in Hawaii. To get people to stop yelling at each other and, marching down streets, and, get them to talk to each other. If I could get, say, a Monsanto, executive in the room with some community members and some environmentalists, just have a conversation, that would be the capstone of my year. So that would be a big issue. I definitely want to see the energy push that we're working on now in Hawaii become even more robust. People are looking to Hawaii for how we're putting together our smart grid, working on our get away from our reliance on oil, since we use so much of it here for our energy. those are the kinds of things I would like to see pushed this year. So.
Okay, interesting. I mean, one of the things I always find intriguing when we talk about mediation or in the diplomatic realm, things like Track 1.5 or Track 2 diplomacy, where you get sort of non-governmental people together. I mean, there's always this tension, right? Because if you get like-minded people together, it's pretty easy to get together and talk about things. But perhaps nothing gets really accomplished because you have sort of an echo chamber effect. But then if you bring in people who, like the Monsanto person versus maybe the environmentalist or something like that, maybe you get people who are so far apart, you know, they're just not going to talk to each other. They'll talk past each other, talk at each other. Where's the balance there? Or is there one that we have to pick, or we do both? What do you think?
Well, you need to create a safe space. And anytime you do a facilitation or mediation, you need a safe space for those people. It can't be, you do need transparency, so you know, to invite people to the room. But to constantly be under cameras, I think makes it very difficult for them to make agreements. Also, I think a problem for whether it's politicians or for you know, a representative like Monsanto, to get those people in the room who actually can make decisions, who are at least, at the very least, are respected by their communities, or respective communities. Because if you send, say, somebody who already has links with Monsanto as the environmental representative to that group, it loses full credibility. So you need somebody who is seen as a strong voice for that side of the community, but they can't go in just thinking it's going to be a battle, this versus that. You won't get anything done. So to get them to identify people who are willing to take the time to understand some of the things that the other side will say. Think Tech Hawaii in the past has interviewed Peter Adler, who is an amazing individual here working on the islands, to get actually some of these big players working together on the GMO issue in Kauai, to bring people from very different areas to sit there and talk to each other. The Joint Fact-Finding Group, they put together policy recommendations, and these are scientists and, you know, and individuals from the community to craft these things. So there are ways to create that safe space, but you have to have the right people in the room as well.
Okay, interesting. We're getting toward the tail end of our show. Kind of looking forward to for both yourself and the sustainable leader. What are some things that we should be watching that you might be up to in the coming months or year or so?
Okay, actually there's a couple of things. One, this creating this room for this place where people can put their own thoughts. So what you have is you have this side of the room is yelling from this side of the room is yelling from this side. What about all those voices in between? We don't hear that very often. You hear Fox News or MSNBC. You don't hear, you know, all the stuff in between. So again, what I'd like to do with the Sustainable Leader and what we plan to do is to create online facilitated dialogues. So for instance, if you would like to write an article about your position on GMOs, even though you may not be a full expert on it, to have your view in there. So we'll have one page, for instance, on a very controversial topic. You know, should GMOs be banned? Or, you know, dealing with climate change or something like that. So to have a facilitated dialogue space. Another thing we're working on is to create courses for people to take, some for free, some for small fees. And those courses to kind of instigate, and it could be, again, someone who's a soccer mom who wishes to talk about, create a course for, you know, creating good food for your children. They would be allowed to do that. It gets community contribution. So we hope to create that course system in the next few months. The first one we're going to actually put up is the citizen journalism course, which we're going to plan to give for free, and it will be a course to train citizen journalists, people who are not journalists by trade, but want to share their thoughts, and they need to become more professional and adept at doing that. So basically we want to train a bunch of journalists to cover the Iucn conference, to cover the issues in Hawaii, and further afield the rest of the world. So that as well. Those are our big things for this year.
That's a lot to get done.
Yeah.
All right. Very good.
We could use some help.
Yes, very much. Anybody watching would like to get engaged with the Sustainable Leader, and I think we'll have some more programs in the future.
Looking forward to it.
About this. So wrapping up in closing, I would just like to thank my guest, Nathan, from the Sustainable Leader, one of our alumnus at our MA in GLSD at HPU. Thank you for joining us here at Think Tech.
Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. And then I'd just like to, one more announcement that I mentioned before. Just remember, we've got our presidential lecture series on sustainable development at HPU. So on February 9th, we have Investing in Nature for Resilient Societies and a Sustainable Future with Inger Anderson, Director General of the International Union of Conservation of Nature. And Can Science Save Us? Advice for the Next President of the United States by Dr. Neil Lane, Senior Fellow for Science and Technology at Rice University. So please, if you're interested, please come to some of these events. Should be some interesting conversations. And that's what we've got time for today. I'm Patrick Bratton at Global Connections. Thank you to Jay, to Zuri, to Nick, and the whole Think Tech team here. It's always fun to talk with you and hear people's thoughts. Have a good day.